Hello, it's Book Quote Wednesday and the word is never. Today I am reading from my time travel novel Time's Chariot. From human prehistory onwards there have been people moving among us, correspondents sent back by the home time, who look just like us but have extra powers and abilities, as shown by this correspondent who has just arrived in Iran in our 11th century. Help! Help me! The correspondent paused and cocked his head, still fingering the halter of the camel tied up beside the road. He had stopped to inspect the animal because a camel saddled for a rider, but riderless, aroused his curiosity. He was in the middle of what was still called Persia, and it was shortly after his arrival at 0800 local time on 13th May, in the year the faithful called 407, the Christians called 1029, and his masters called 1564 pre-home time. He was on the road between Qum and Isfahan, and so far, apart from the camel, he had seen no sign of anyone else around him. Help! The voice was more desperate, and, turning up his hearing, the correspondent could hear the sounds of conflict, heavy breathing, metal on metal. The noise came from the other side of a small hill beside the road through the desert, and he set off over it at a slow jog. There was a fight going on around the other side of the hill, 3 against 1, and the one was tiring. The correspondent had no idea of the rights and wrongs of the situation, and no especial desire to intervene, so instead he began to record the scene, sucking the information in through his eyes and storing it in the special areas at the back of his brain. In his final despair, the one man below raised his eyes and saw the correspondent at the top of the rise. "In the name of the Prophet, help me!" he cried. Still, the correspondent might have stayed put if one of the 3 others hadn't turned around and spotted him. Immediately he charged with an angry bellow, scimitar raised. The correspondent stood where he was and watched the man approach. Something beside him assessed a threat to personal safety, and he shifted to defense mode without showing any external change. The attacker's yell peaked as he drew close and brought the blade down. With one hand, the correspondent swatted the blade aside. The other he jabbed deep into the man's throat. The man staggered backwards and fell, eyes bulging, choking on his crushed larynx. The 2 remaining attackers stood over their now motionless victim. They ran at him as one, and again the correspondent let them get close. Then his foot came up at the end of a straight leg, catching the first under the ribs and crushing his heart. The second man got the correspondent's rigid fingers in his solar plexus, and his spinal cord was severed by a chop to the back of his neck. The correspondent looked down at the 3 bodies, stored the scene in his memory, and then went down to see if the one they had been attacking was still alive. He was. A young man only just out of adolescence with a scraggly beard. He had propped himself up on one arm, and he gazed at the correspondent with awe. "You just stood there," he said. "I have never seen someone dispatch 3 bandits so quickly. You have my eternal gratitude." The bandits had actually posed little threat. The correspondent still didn't know much, but he knew that, provided he avoided immediate trauma and kept himself in more or less one piece, his body could overcome virtually any threat to it, from war or disease, and regenerate itself indefinitely. He was packed full of added organic components, and he possessed skills and senses that evolution had never given Homo sapiens and never would. He could even remold his features if desired, given a day or so to himself. At the moment he appeared like any other man of the region in his mid-30s. The young man in the sand would not have understood, so the correspondent just asked, "Who were they?" "Infidel, worthless bandits," the young man said casually. He looked up at his helper. "And who are you, friend?" Who was he? A good question. Your memory will be affected by the transference. They had told him that, though he couldn't remember who they were, and he still had no specific memory of the home time. He did know that he had a function: to observe, to comment, to survive. He was correspondent RC/1029. Any further identity that he took would be up to him. "My name is of no importance, and I am going to Isfahan," the correspondent said, slightly to his surprise, because until that moment he had had no idea which direction on the road he was taking. Meanwhile, he guessed what might be worrying his new friend. "I'm no bandit. If I were, you would be dead by now." "A worthy point. I am Ali Salim Said, and I have the misfortune to be scouting for my father's caravan, which will pass its way shortly. Scouting? For bandits, Ali said with feeling. He began very gingerly to climb to his feet. Then I would say you're good at your job, said the correspondent, holding out his hand. Ali burst out laughing as he took it and pulled himself up. I'm good at finding them, but not at detecting. One of them lay by the road as if already waylaid, and two waited behind a rock. Is that your camel then, back by the road? It is. Ali had finally found his feet, only to fall over and clutch at the correspondent. Then I had better help you get back there, the correspondent said. An hour later the caravan finally passed by, and the correspondent was taken in, helped by a glowing introduction from Ali and the mute testimony of the 3 graves which the correspondent had been digging. And that was how the correspondent came to enter Isfahan. Isfahan hustled and bustled with the activity and purpose of a major metropolis. The city was a place where trade routes converged, and it thrived in its business of producing cotton, silk and wood, with hundreds of individual shops turning out carpets and metal goods. The wind shifted, and the correspondent quickly deduced the location of the animal market. Is this place not magnificent? Said Ali. He and the correspondent strolled side by side through the bazaar, as best as 2 men could stroll in a place packed with such a number of people and animals. The correspondent made a non-committal noise. To his surprise, an item of knowledge about Isfahan dropped into place in his mind. Isfahan was already doomed, but it would soon recover from the fate that awaited it. In 1051 it would be conquered by the Seljuk Turks, and as compensation it would become the capital of their empire. But by 1051 the correspondent would be long gone. After 1037 he would have no further reason for staying here. 1037, another ration scrap of memory. As a correspondent he knew he was a free agent, but apparently not that free. He hadn't been dropped in 11th century Persia on a whim. 30 seconds ago he had been a casual wanderer, but now he knew he was here to meet someone, and that this particular someone would die in 1037. The man was known to have spent the last 14 years of his life as scientific advisor and physician to the ruler of Isfahan, so that gave the correspondent somewhere to start his search. Are you well? Ali was looking at him with anxiety. The correspondent realized his expression must have been blank, his thoughts miles away. Yes, I'm well, he said. And yes, Ali, this is a marvellous city indeed. Do you know where the palace might be? Ali gave him a strange look, but yes, he did know where the palace was, and he was happy to act as a guide. It was an impressive structure, and the 2 men stood at a safe distance off to observe it. Do you have business in there? Ali asked. I've come to meet a man. Well, then ask to be announced to him. He's never heard of me, said the correspondent, but I know how to get his attention. I need parchment and charcoal and ink, black, red and blue. Later on he lay on his bed in his room, hired with money he had taken from the dead bandits when Ali wasn't looking, and composed his report. His eyes stared blankly towards the ceiling, and though it was dark he could easily see the plaster above him. He had turned all his senses to maximum while he prepared his report. Should anyone come by, they would find him apparently in a coma, and he had no intention of letting that happen. First he put in the straightforward sensory data of the day. The air, unpolluted, but also hot and dusty. The terrain, tough and unyielding, only just begrudging a living to the locals. The precise temperature, the shade of blue of the sky, the texture of the rock and the sand. Other things that made him feel good, the friendship of the caravan and of Ali, the gratitude of Ali's father, the vitality of Isfahan outside his window, the city of only a few thousand, but still more alive, more animated than the home time with all its billions could ever be. The taste of the food, the smell of the people and animals. And how did he know what the home time was like when he had such a poor memory of it? He just did. When the report was finished, he breathed a sigh. His first. Now it just needed filing. The moon was up, so he thought, and a tone that only he could hear sounded in his head. RC/1029, stand by, said a voice. Then RC/29, transmit. He thought again, and in a couple of seconds it was over. Report received, RC/1029, said the voice. His first report filed. A big moment. He got out of bed and strolled over to the window to look at the moon. Somewhere up there was the station, awaiting retrieval by those who had put it there centuries from now. It was comforting to consider. He had no doubt that sooner or later in his career he would feel very lonely, and it would be good to know that up there was something else from the future, a link to the home time. As long as the moon was up, he would be able to make contact with it. That was another item in the innate knowledge he had brought back with him. He had 1,000 years to go before he could return to the home time. In 1,000 years' time, in the 21st century, the world would be sufficiently advanced technologically that the home time could send the recall equipment back without it appearing anachronistic. 1,000 years until recall day. No doubt he had had his reasons for volunteering for this assignment, but thinking about it now, it did seem rather a long time. But he was at the start of his career. He was alive and well and surrounded by thousands upon thousands of facts and minutiae waiting to be noted and reported on. And tomorrow he would start by seeking out the man in the palace whose philosophies would help carve out the path of Western science centuries hence, and who would one day be known in the West as the third Aristotle. But that, of course, lay in the future, and the correspondent had better reason than most to know that there was a great deal of future ahead. Remember, you can buy my books at www.benjeeps.com. See you next time.